make sure you don't become a boring dickhead in the meantime. Enjoy it, have fun, and if you can laugh at yourself, you'll always find a way to enjoy the realities of the shit that hits the fan, which it's inevitably going to do over and over again.
Hello, welcome to the Founded and Grounded podcast. I'm Laura Rawlings, co-hosting alongside Ollie Collard, business startup coach. Hey Ollie, how are you?
I'm very well, Laura. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good.
It's funny, you and I were just mulling over what we're going to talk about in today's podcast, and I was like, we're going to keep it short and tight and just let our guests do all the talking. And then we realised that as you asked me one question, I had so much to say. So this is going to be interesting how this unfolds over the next sort of 45 minutes. Go on, Ollie, spill the beans. Who have we got?
So we've got Dan Murray-Serter, who is a serial entrepreneur and investor and fellow podcaster. And I'm absolutely delighted to have him on Founded and Grounded talking about everything that he does.
I can imagine you are, because you've been pursuing him for quite some time in the best possible professional fashion.
Yeah, that's fair to say. I think, sending him a few messages on Twitter over a course of about a year and a half. Slowly, catch the monkey, as they say. And I'm delighted that Dan eventually said yes.
Yay, definitely. Well, there's loads in what he's got to say here, so buckle up, everybody. And let's begin, shall we, by jumping straight in and finding out about, a bit more about who he is, and in particular the business that he's focusing on now.
So some of our listeners will probably know about you and your business from your podcast, Secret Leaders. But for those who don't, can you tell us a bit about your origin story, why you started Heights in the first place, and fundamentally what problem you're solving?
So Heights is my, sixth or seventh business, it's worth saying. So I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. To anyone who's good at maths will notice that I've cycled through quite a few in a short amount of time. That is because I currently have three that I'm the co-founder of. But I'm CEO at Heights. I also have Kindling Media, which makes Secret Leaders, and now a podcast called Big Spender, and a couple of others that are in pilot right now, which is a bootstrap business. So there's 4 of us at Kindling Media. There's 20 of us at Heights. That is a venture-backed business and crowdfunded. And then I run a community called Founders, which is I'm the co-founder of. It's a non-profit, has its own CEO. I'm on the board. I do very little now. But those are 3 businesses, and then there were 4 beforehand. And so my origin story with Heights is I was having a really hard time in my last business, which was called Grabble, which went really, really, really well, and then went terribly and just imploded and failed. But for the period of time that it went really well, it was a great learning experience. I really cut my teeth in the startup world. I had 10 years worth of experience in a couple of years of startup life. And the downside of this is I had extreme mental health concerns over that time. I suffered badly from burnout, which was very much caused by my own stupidity, to be totally honest. If I tell you the stuff that I was doing, it's very obvious burnout material. But I'd also experienced quite deep depression, but that was after my dad died. So that was there's a couple of there's many types of depression you can get, but situational depression is in a way in itself quite helpful, because it's obviously quite rational to feel depressed after a parent dies. So I was never too concerned about where my depression came from. It was very rational and obvious to me, but it just was, my concern was always, when is this going to end? Anxiety, something that I still deal with now, but rarely, but I had really chronic anxiety. Basically what happened is I ended up with insomnia. One day I just couldn't sleep, and I wasn't sure why that was the case, which was very frustrating to me, because if I can understand the source of something, I can get to the root cause of something, I can get to work on what I can do to change it. But in this case, I just got insomnia, couldn't sleep one night, then couldn't sleep the next, and this went on for 6 months. And so I was chronically ill over that time, as you would be, not sleeping for so long. I tried all the different things. I tried therapy, sleep therapy, Calm, Sleepio, CBT, you name a thing. I went to the doctor, he gave me sleeping pills. I tried anything that you would do if you're really suffering. And in the end, after 6 months, I went to see a friend for dinner, and she recommended that I go and see a dietitian. And I thought it was super strange, because I was like, I got nothing wrong with my diet, not fat. Like, why did I go see a dietitian? And she was like, well, dietitians, they use nutrition to heal sick people. So it's actually diet and food, but if you have an illness, if you have a sickness. And I was just kind of like unable to connect the dots here. I was like, I don't have an illness, I don't have a sickness, I just can't sleep. And she was like, okay, I have anything wrong with my body? And she's like, well, your brain is in your body, isn't it? And I was like, right, yeah. And she's like, I mean, you tried everything else, you haven't tried this, like, could well be something. And I was like, you know what, you're right, I'm so desperate, I've tried everything else, I'll try this. And I went to the dietitian, and she very quickly diagnosed me and said, I think that you've got a bunch of deficiencies right now that are causing this. Your brain is essentially sending you alarm signals that the house is on fire. I'm going to tell you to take super high quality and therefore unbelievably expensive, but potent omega-3s, so DHA omega-3s, because your brain is 60% fat and 90% of that is the compound DHA. So she's like, your brain needs to be fed what it needs to thrive at this point. So omega-3s, B vitamin complex, because it regulates your energy and you're having like mad energy spikes and drops at all the wrong times, which is why you have insomnia. And then antioxidants, so in the form of blueberry extract, because it's the most potent form of antioxidant, which is going to essentially clean out your lymphatic system of your brain, which will basically be like a car wash whilst you go to sleep. You'll put your brain, basically antioxidants will clean out all the free radicals in your brain, and these things should really help. And I was like, you know what, lady, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I will just do it. And within like 2 or 3 days, I started sleeping. And I was like unbelievably amazed that this woman had been so right so quickly, and also very annoyed that no one in 6 months had suggested supplements. And also I'm English, right? So I was massively cynical that supplements could ever work / do anything for me. I'd never taken them before, really, the occasional vitamin D. So I was really surprised that it worked. Not very interested or engaged in this, but these are the moments in life that create real light bulb opportunities for you, right? If you listen. And so I became really interested in this idea of mental health and nutrition. And I was like, I can't be the only person who's had nutrition make an impact on their mental health. I wonder if there's like much evidence base around it. And then I started reading science papers because I'm quite nerdy and because I enjoy reading that stuff. And turns out there's reams of the stuff, like paper after paper, evidence after evidence. The world is full of information and scientific evidence about the role of nutrition in mental health. So depression, psychosis, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's.
So Dan, you created your own category called brain care. How did you come up with the concept of creating your own lane?
That's a good question. The answer is, and it's still a developing piece of work, but the answer is, it's like I was saying to you, I was really interested in mental health and nutrition, but no one else is, because no one is aware that that's a thing. And so I got into a situation where we were talking about brain health and mental well-being, but we had this issue that brain health sounds like it's for people with Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, so they don't really want to learn about it because it's not that interesting. And mental health and mental well-being always sounded like something that you either had and understood, but then you were massively skeptical anyway about the role of nutrition, or you've never experienced mental health problems, and frankly, you don't really care because you just kind of assume that everyone else is whinging about their problems in life, and because you don't suffer from them, they're not that relatable. And so we were never landing our message with brain health and mental well-being. We shouldn't really figure out what we were doing. And then one day, but it's worth saying this is like, well over a year into having launched the product and launched the Smart Supplement, which is our key hero product. A year into that, we're still trying to find the right thing. And we start to have a conversation, Joel and I, about skincare, about hair care, about nail care, about these industries have done a great job of explaining to people that a little bit every single day makes a big difference. It's the personal care touch, it's self-care, it's the moments that 2 minutes of brushing your teeth in the morning and the evening, it's not such a big piece of work, but your parents teach you to do it, and then you teach your kids, and the net effect of that is people don't have their teeth falling out and decaying. And same with a bit of skincare and a bit of cream, and people have this anti-wrinkle stuff. And that's really interesting. Your brain is your most important organ, and there's nothing around brain care. There's actually nothing. Well, what is akin to toothpaste and a toothbrush? What is akin to like skin cream and your face? Well, actually, nutrition nutrients, supplements, and your brain, that is actually the art of feeding your brain what it needs to thrive every day. That kind of makes sense for brain care. So this was sort of our approach, whether or not it's right or wrong, or it takes off how we want it to be, because obviously building a category is pretty bloody hard. But this was totally our approach to how we're trying to communicate the category we're building and why brain care is important. It's your most important organ, and if you lose it, you are fucked, and there's no getting back from it. So why take that risk? Literally, science says what you need to do, the nutrients you need to feed it every single day. And most people's response to this is, cool, well, then I'll just get it in my whole food diet. In which case they say, good luck, go on, try it. Try and eat one day of the perfect Mediterranean diet 3 times a day. You just try that. Like, no one bothers. We live busy lives, distractions. Most of us are, taking cheat mode, sandwich at lunch, all that stuff. That's absolutely fine. Do those things, but don't neglect the importance of feeding your brain what it needs to thrive. Because again, it is kind of a case of use it or lose it. At the end of the day, for anyone that's seen people, this is more brain health stuff, so cognitive decline, etc. But for anyone that's seen people go on that journey, it's just not worth the risk. You want to give yourself the best chance in life to wake up every single day, be your best self, and do the most that you possibly can, and be the best version of yourself you want. And all of that stuff comes down to your brain. It comes down to your energy levels. It comes down to your sleep. These are all things that the right nutrients will do to help you thrive. So from our perspective, this is a really important category to build. But if you're building a category, you kind of need to build an ecosystem, which means you do definitely need to have, an army of supporters with you on the journey, right? So our job is, in terms of creating a category, is also to make sure that we're inviting other brands into this space to compete with us, because I actually genuinely feel like we're stronger together, right? It takes more than just one brand to get this message across. So that's really what we're in the business for.
Love it, Dan. And obviously you said earlier, obviously supplements aren't a new thing. So why are Heights different? How do you kind of stand out in the marketplace?
So we've got 2 products, the Smart Supplement and Smart Probiotic. Smart Supplement, which is our launch product, has 2 really important angles to it. The first is it has a special capsule, so a clever capsule that is a capsule inside a capsule. So the outside of the capsule is omega-3s, so all plant-based, but DHA, omega-3, as we discussed earlier, DHA and EPA omega-3s, all at the scientific dosages as well, most importantly. There's no caking agents or synthetic fillers or anything like that. But then there's a capsule injected inside it, and inside that one, so it's like a 2-in-1 each capsule, and inside that one is essentially a multivitamin, but with blueberry extract as well. So you won't find blueberry extract in any product in the market. You have to buy that completely separately. We're the only ones that have that as part of the product. So it's really unique, which I think is one of the reasons why so many people talk about the benefits from it. But the other part is the capsule itself. It's a super unique, super special capsule that makes sure that the bioavailability of the ingredients that get inside your bloodstream actually reach where they're meant to. And this is the thing that we work on really hard at Heights, where we only have 2 products. We have very special capsule technology that we are obsessed over. And that translates to the second product, which is Smart Probiotic. There's 2 really key USPs about Smart Probiotic. The first is that it's the first one that targets the gut-brain axis. So the benefits you get from Smart Probiotic are gut, mental health, and immunity. And it's very rare, we're the first in the UK to have a probiotic that focuses on mental health. And we have 380 clinical studies backing this. So it's taken 2.5 years to develop this product. We have a strain called Cerebiome, which basically targets the gut-brain axis through the vagus nerve, which is essentially the highway that speaks from the brain to the gut. 90% of the serotonin that you create in your body is created in your gut. So it is the main source of serotonin, which means that the benefits you would feel from a probiotic, other than better generalized gut health, are things like less anxiety, better mood, etc., the things that come with developing more serotonin. The second most important part of the probiotic is, other than obviously the scientific credibility, I talked about the capsule technology. So from an ingredient point of view or a nutrient point of view, in probiotic world, you have something called CFUs. That is colony forming units. It basically means bacteria. We have 65 billion CFUs in a single capsule, which makes us pretty much the most potent probiotic in the whole of the UK. But what happens in probiotics is they're very sensitive. They're live cultures, they're live bacteria, so they deplete quickly. So we responsibly put our CFU claim on the label as 20 billion, just in case. And we've just done a whole bunch of third-party testing and been able to prove that 33 billion CFUs, so 33 billion bacteria, make it to your colon. Now, why this is so important, and this is a big USP. Most probiotics, your Yakults, your foods, your kefirs, your kimchi, etc., your stomach acid is so potent, so strong, it kills most bacteria, most probiotics that go to your gut anyway. So the journey, the thing that's really important is getting the bacteria to your colon. That is where it is meant to be going. That is the journey. So survivability is the key word in this space. And survivability is exactly the thing that we focused on for our probiotic. So we developed a acid resistant capsule. And the whole point of this acid resistant capsule is how far can we take the bacteria to the colon before it all basically just disintegrates into nothing. And so third-party tests have been showing that our competitors that might have somewhere between 10 and 20 billion CFUs on their label actually have about 5 to 10% of their label claim making it to the colon. We are at 170% because 33 billion of our 20 billion claim, but half of at manufacturers 65, are making it to your colon. So not only have we been really clear on selecting the right strains, but again, the thing that Heights focuses on so strongly is the encapsulation. You've seen, I'm sure, how the smart supplement looks, etc. You know, it's very unique. You know, you notice that it's different, but it's actually, there's a lot more to it than that. These are big investments to make, but they are worthwhile because in the supplement space, it isn't just about the quality of the nutrients. Is it getting to the place it needs to get to make the impact? And those are the key points for Heights, right? That is, when we create a product, we want to make sure it is literally the best in the market. And so after 3 years, we only have 2 products. We don't have shiny new syndrome. We have, let's make the best product. Let's be super specific on the research that goes into it. And then let's make it the absolute best. And that's quite a niche strategy, right? Because there's not a lot.
Love it. And I think, you know, all the scientific research that's gone into it is very clear. And obviously building the community prior to launching both the products is a great strategy. In regards to sort of backing up the claims, have you got any data around the customers that have been part of Heights and, you know, kind of a tracker before and after in terms of what difference it's made to people's lives?
Yeah, so I think that's, you know, I was talking to someone about this the other day, you know, talking about the change it makes to people's lives. Someone was asking about culture, and I'm like, there's 2 things that make a great culture. One is growth, and the second is working in a purposeful company and getting customer reviews. And our Slack integration of customer reviews is so uplifting. There's so many reviews coming in with the amount of detail people give about how our product has actually changed their life, which might sound like really extreme language that people don't believe necessarily, but we see it every single day, multiple times a day, of this product has changed my life because XYZ. I think that is by far the most rewarding part of running a business in the health and wellness space. Obviously, you also get like negative stuff too, but the positive outweighs the negative 10 to 1 or more. And so it's such a rewarding feeling coming to work, knowing that you're actually helping people live healthier lives and solve real problems that they're having. And, you know, we do these NPS surveys, you know, and one of the questions is, you know, could you live without Heights in your life? And always is amazing to us that there are just so many people willing to say, no, I mean, I'd be devastated if this company didn't exist and this product didn't exist in my life. It's my absolute number one. And that is just an incredible feeling for a founder, because when you start, you have these product development concepts. You have no idea really how they're going to go. You don't really know if they're going to work at all.
100%, Dan. And sort of moving on slightly from Heights, but I recently watched your inspiring TED Talk, which is about how laughter can build resilience. And for me, this is one of the most essential traits in a founder. I want to know, how can founders build more resilience in themselves? And I also wanted to ask you about your dad's philosophy on life and how this still lives on inside you today.
Yeah, good question. So, well, how can people build resilience is a tough one. Most of us try to avoid challenging situations. The honest truth is, if you want to force yourself into resilience, then go do something hard. Go do a hike. Go do a tough mudder. Go do a marathon. Do something you don't believe that you can do. That is an amazing way to build resilience, because every single day your mind's telling you no, but your body is, telling you maybe you can. And I was actually at a party on Saturday, and a friend told me, a friend of his who's in the Marines, the way that he gets himself to this always is, and it's apparently a Marines mantra, which is, you're tougher than you think you are. And you always think that you're not that tough, and you always think that you can't do something, but it turns out you can. So, it's difficult to build resilience on purpose, so to speak. But the reality is, the situation you don't want to get into is having such an easy life that, don't worry about it. If you're a founder, you're not going to have that easy a life. But if you're not, then, putting yourself into difficult situations on purpose to build your toughness is really important, because one day your precious little protected life will hit a small hurdle and you will capitulate and frankly feel pathetic for it. And so you should, because life is hard. Hard shit happens. And learning how to deal with this stuff and pick yourself up and try again is an exceptionally important life skill. And if you're an entrepreneur and you can't handle that stuff, you should not be an entrepreneur. It's as simple as that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't feel stressed. It doesn't mean you shouldn't feel like it's all too much for you. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't feel these things. But it does mean when you do feel those things, lean into them. Understand why you're feeling this way. How does that stuff make you feel? What are you going to do about it? Right? These are the questions that you need to ask yourself in really hard times, rather than just letting your negative self-talk run away from you and convince you that you're worthless and nothing and all the other bits in between. The other part of your question was on my dad. So, what does his mindset teach me? Well, this is the thing. My dad had really poor health. So I've been blessed with generally good health. I do have pretty mixed mental health occasionally, although currently a lot better. Last couple of years, genuinely since I started Heights, it's been so much better. Nutrition's made an enormous impact on me. It's not perfect, but it is still better. And I am, really, really grateful for having a dad that taught me a lot about stoicism. I didn't have to read Marcus Aurelius, although, ironically, I do actually always have a Marcus Aurelius book next to me because I love stoicism so much. But that is because my dad, I think this is a audio podcast, not video, right? I just pulled out a book of meditations by Marcus Aurelius for the listeners, because I have it in front of me all the time. But my dad was the ultimate stoic. He had terribly bad health all the time. He was blind. He had 1,000,001 problems, and he never let it get to him. He ran a business. He's a very inspiring person. He was always cheerful, always tough, always honest, but always tough. And that's really important to have as a role model in your life, right? To see how hard life can get, how unfair that is, and then to just realize every single day you wake up, if you have your health, you're so much more than other people. You need to shut the fuck up and get on with how lucky your day actually is. And there's an amazing quote, which is something along the lines of, a healthy man wants 1,000,000 things. An unhealthy man wants just one thing. And I think that's the perfect example. We all want more, but do we ever appreciate that we have enough? And if you have your health, having lived with someone my whole life who had such terrible health, I have enough. I'm so grateful for that every day. It's an amazing lesson. I wish I didn't have to watch my dad in as much pain as I did throughout his whole life. It's a horrible experience as a child, but also I have so much admiration for it, and it taught me to be very grateful for the fact that I can walk, that I can see, I can live the life that I choose to live and take opportunities as they come. My dad was essentially in a prison. His body not his mind, but his body was his prison. And for some people with mental health problems, their mind is their prison. If this isn't your reality, you're free in the world. So take that opportunity and do something meaningful with it rather than letting yourself succumb to self-pity, because you have so much more than so many people.
Amazing outlook on life, Dan, and thank you for sharing that. It's incredibly inspiring, and it's clear to see how much impact your dad's had on you and continues to do so in regards to your life and your business as well. We were talking off air briefly about having young children. So I've got 2 young children under the age of 4, and you became a dad for the first time last year. So I just wanted to know a bit more about, talk to me about running a business and being a parent. And specifically, I want to know about one thing that's changed about Dan since being a dad.
One thing that's changed about Dan since being a dad is timekeeping. That's the main thing. Very relevant for our interview, obviously, because I was late. So that actually, even being late is very un-me. I was always on time. But as I explained to you, my day started late because I ended up having to take my daughter to nursery, which I wasn't the parent responsible for doing this morning. So that changed my day's outlook a little bit. And bath time is still bath time. So it's unusual for me because I would start work and get on my emails and just get on it the second that I had a spare minute, and I wouldn't really know when to finish work either. And ever since I had my daughter, I do bath time. I do bath time, I do bedtime, I do it proudly. I love doing it. Very occasionally, like Secret Leaders, for example, very occasionally, I need to interview someone in LA. I'm like, okay, fine, maybe it'll go over into bath time. But it's so rare. And otherwise, I just say no. It's very simple. I just say no. So that's new for me. I mean, it's been a year now, so it feels more comfortable. But that's after 10 years, right? So that's building a new habit. And really, it's understanding priorities. So it's having a priority that's greater for work, but greater than work, is also weird to me. But it does show me that I think people need passion and people need purpose. It's very easy. You can see why some people's purpose is their children. I don't want, personally, I don't sound too judgmental or anything. I don't want my purpose ever to be my kids. I want my own purpose. I want my kids to have their own purpose. And that's why I always feel very lucky for doing the work that I do, because I find a lot of purpose in my work. But I can understand why, because a lot of people who don't do purposeful work and don't therefore care about it are looking for something to plug that hole in their life they can get obsessed about. And I totally understand how kids can fulfill that need, like 100%, because it's an awesome growth journey is the answer. It's a tiring and awesome growth journey, and there's no intelligence or book or anything that you can read for that journey. It's all really individual to you and your child and all of these things, and you just got to fucking suck it up and learn what you can at the pace that you possibly can on the journey. And it's an amazing opportunity for a human being to go through, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely no manual. And as you say, it makes you so much better with utilizing your time more effectively and setting those boundaries and having those bedtime routines at the end of your day to look forward to. And yeah, I greatly respect all parents who are running a business and managing too. And like you say, it's a great learning curve and a personal development journey at the same time as well. Fantastic, Dan. Now, given that you're an angel investor who's invested in over 50 businesses, I'm keen to know, what's one skill that makes you a great founder but bad angel investor, or vice versa?
Oh, easy. Great founder. I am visionary. I'm excitable. I come across passionate. I can get other people to believe, in my dream and support me, and all of these things that is so essential for a good founder. And that stuff makes me a terrible angel investor, because I believe in other people too. I don't really do due diligence ultimately. I'm sophisticated enough to know that no one fucking has any idea how well their business is going to go. It's all bullshit. And so you might as well just trust in the founder. And, that's not going to make me a really successful angel investor, realistically. Like, a great angel investor is more likely to look at the numbers, the market opportunity and all that shit. But I don't have time for that. I can't be bothered for it. I invest in people, not businesses. And that's the truth. I mean, I do only invest in scalable 100 or 0 type businesses, because I think that risk is worth it to me. And that's actually my intention. My intention is to get to 100. I'm at 50. it sounds so ridiculous, but the risk of doing 50 is you don't have a single hit. Like the power law in theory is you get 1 in 100. And so I need to get to 100 in theory, assuming that 99 don't make it. I need 1 at least by power law to make it, and at 50 I'm quite at risk. So that is a great question, by the way, but like absolutely where my entrepreneurial nature makes me a bad investor for sure. Where it makes me a great investor though is massively supportive. Never ever grill any of my investees. I give them advice, say this is how I do things. This is some stuff that I've done wrong that I would advise you don't do. But I don't really give a fuck. I don't really care. I mean, if they're assholes, I wouldn't invest in them again, and it does happen. But I don't really care. I'm not, I don't have the time to grill people or treat them like, I have that sort of low tolerance for people acting badly. So if they do it, I'm not going to bother. There's plenty of investors that get a bee in their bonnet and really make sure they spend time with the founders, grilling them and telling them what they should be doing and shouldn't be doing, all that stuff. I don't give a shit. If I find out that I don't think someone's ethical or a good person or any little thing in between that could be like whatever, what I would deem to be a bad person that I shouldn't have invested in, I just suck it up. I'm like, well, I made a bad choice. Cool. What have I learned from it? I can't be fucked to give them the airtime or bother, and I would never get in the way of anything that they're doing. I just wouldn't support them actively. So I think this stuff is important. The other thing that is, a thing is time. I'm so bad at managing my time. With 50 angel investments, I underestimated, as you would, that people want to ask you questions and they want help and can't really do that. And I did take on an advisory position for one of my investments as well, and I'm really good at it. I love it. But I couldn't do 2, for example. No. I picked one, I do it properly. I don't want to, basically I wouldn't want to take shares in someone's company and then not do a fucking great job. So, I've learned a lesson from that as well. I probably shouldn't have done it, but as I've done it, I feel like I've got a responsibility to do a great job of it. And so I'm always on WhatsApp with that person. I'm always helping them. I'm always doing above and beyond stuff. But it is a good reminder to me that I couldn't do a handful of these like I can do a handful of investments. And I'm also super clear to my investees. I'm like, I do always say a founder is quite possibly not a good investor. If you want time, which sometimes people do, don't get current founders, obviously, exited is fine, but don't get a current founder, currently CEO, useless. The only thing I can't give you is my time. So I can't do that. But I'm good with network or intros or things that are can I help introduce them to the right person? I think I'm as good as anyone in the UK for that.
A word about our sponsors. As a founder, cybersecurity isn't top of your priorities. Yet Alliance has identified cyber threats as one of the top 3 risks facing business globally. This is where NovaBlue comes in. Its founder, Steve Mason, was technical director with GCHQ. He was in charge of keeping the nation safe from cyber threats. He set up NovaBlue to help keep businesses safe. NovaBlue are offering Founded and Grounded listeners a free cybersecurity health check. Simply go to nova-blue.co.uk/podcast offer. Right then, Ollie, we're going to rattle through as much as we can in a short space of time so we can give more time to hear from Dan. One of the first things that struck me was Dan talking about how he, his experience, burnout, started educating himself, reading, learning about the brain, neuroscience, gut-brain axis. It is fascinating. It's a journey I have been on myself. And so he started writing a newsletter and sharing what he was learning with other people. I just read more and more of it and used it in my one-to-one therapy sessions. But for him, after 1.5 years of sharing his knowledge, he then created products and has launched his business. And I just want to say from the outset, we can all read the same stuff, but it comes down to what you do with it. And so fascinating hearing from an entrepreneur coming into this space, parts of which I am in, but coming in with a mindset that can see how to grow this much bigger business where he can reach many more people and a product. And I just found that it's really made me reflect on what I am doing, because there are people who will have known what he was talking about and who know, and many nutritionists will be thinking, well, I do this in my work all the time. But he's an entrepreneur, and the difference an entrepreneur makes with that knowledge and information, as we're seeing in the birth of Heights, is pretty big.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And I think we as humans often learn better when we teach information that we've absorbed. So I think Dan
Yeah,
has
he
done
said
something
that, didn't he?
really
Yeah.
well there in terms of, right, I've learnt this is the impact it's had on my personal life. I want to share this with others. And he's built up this newsletter, which is classic 101 startup book.
Well, it's 101 when you know. But for me, I just thought, why is someone going to just want to know what I've just been reading? But now I'm realising it's 101 business startup.
Yeah, and you build the audience, don't you? You get people interested. Yeah. You build up that community, that trust, which is so important in the world of business. And then once you've got that trust, if there's a solution or an offer or something that you've got potentially to give to that audience, then they're potentially going to be interested in buying it, aren't they?
Which we should say as well, at the start, he didn't have something, did he?
No.
So he just was doing it genuinely from, I've just had this bad experience in my life of being burnt out, and I'm on the route to getting myself sorted, and I'm realizing this is what the brain's like and how it's connected to nutrition, and how amazing is that? And it's great to hear. So him and the team are creating their own category, and it was so interesting, saying alongside skincare, hair care, brain care. I mean, absolutely right. And this new category, and wanting to invite others to be a part of it.
I think this is really intelligent. Obviously creating your own category so you can differentiate yourself and stand out in the marketplace. But B, actually trying to create this ecosystem is vitally important, because if you are creating a new category, obviously you have to spend lots of marketing power on educating your consumers about why they need the products. But what he's saying here is actually inviting everybody in creates a bigger, better category. To give you a kind of, I suppose, a real world example of this, let's say you're a hairdresser and there's a cluster of hairdressers on the high street. Giving my local example here in Bristol, East Street, there's about 13 different barbers. If you were a new barber, would you be based on the high street or maybe somewhere different? Now, in economics, the actual better answer is to be based amongst the competition, which you might not think is necessarily the right thing to do. But the reason for that is that it creates that extra competition. Businesses start trying to innovate and outdo one another. So they might be offering things like dad and son sessions, or beard and hair options together, and bundling products and enticing customers in, and offering a drink with their service, and a discount or loyalty card. So if everybody is based together, actually competition is better for the businesses, but also better for the consumers. To give another example of that as well, this morning I was on my way to my normal co-working space. The door was jammed, I was locked out. They couldn't get in, they had to call a locksmith. We had our podcast going on, so I was like, quick, let's go to or not. And so quick, the podcast must go on, Laura. I quickly just booked another one on my phone. Within 5 minutes, I was in a different co-working space, and the show was going on. So I think the competition is so good in the sense of it's better for the consumer, and it innovates more in terms of the businesses as well.
Yeah, such good examples, actually. Really, really good examples. Just touching on resilience, and just I feel this is a reminder, because we've mentioned this in previous podcasts, so maybe I'm just underlining the bit that I need to notice. But building your resilience, get out your comfort zone, just keep putting yourselves in those tricky scenarios, and kind of actively look for them if you realise you are sitting in a comfort zone. Challenge yourself, and this is how you learn and grow. And just get used to that slightly uncomfortable feeling. But this is what you need. This is what you need to do. So I suppose I'm highlighting this just as for anyone who needs to hear that. It's all right. It is going to feel a bit uncomfy. You're setting up your new business, but he's so right on that.
Yeah, and I think if you do push yourself, like I remember doing the Paris Marathon back in 2014, never done a marathon. I was like, right, I'm going to do one. Had 2 months of training. And didn't do terribly well, but I completed it. I did it, and
that's amazing.
Yeah, that kind of self-belief and pushing yourself through barriers. You don't know until you're in it that what is possible. And so, what I'd encourage everyone to do is push themselves outside of that comfort zone. Of course, it's going to feel unnatural, unnerving, and you often look at people on social media and think, how have they achieved so much? But that doesn't mean that they don't get that feeling. They just learnt to carry on doing that consistently to achieve their goals. And what I would say is, if you are setting yourself a goal or doing something outside of your normal comfort zone, try and plan your next challenge after that, because often once you've achieved that big goal, you kind of crash and burn slightly. So it's always good having a secondary goal on the horizon after that initial challenge.
That's really good. A really good tip there. You're right. It's easy just to sit back again and go, I did that. So what are you doing after the Paris Marathon, Ollie? What is your next thing?
Well, setting up a business, having kids, those have been
thing.
big milestones in my life.
Well, you mentioned kids actually, because as Dan did as well. And I think there are quite a few business podcasts out there where, I'm going to say it, where often, and they're very successful, or mindset ones, and, all about the brain and how to optimize your performance and all this kind of stuff. And it's all done by people who are not necessarily taking the full or equal share of looking after children. They might not have them. I'm not critical of them, but I think it's very different as anyone who becomes that person. If you are responsible for looking after other people, then it changes how much you can give to your business. And so I was interested to observe how Dan has changed, realizing that there are other things now in his life. He has a priority that's bigger than work. And it felt kind of good to hear that, and also hearing how he has adjusted. And the two of you chatting, actually, because it's not something that often gets talked about, especially perhaps not, with fathers as much, dare I say it. I don't want to annoy anyone by saying this, but I think it's a fair thing to perhaps say.
Yeah, and it completely changes your outlook on life when you have kids. And like you say, your world is bigger than yourself, and you've got to look after these little people, which are your number one priority. And I like what Dan says about, obviously, protecting that bed and bath time routine and ensuring that he goes to that every day. That's the non-negotiable that he's putting in as a father. And I think, for me, I was kind of blessed with COVID when I had our first child, because I was basically at home every day, and I was working half a day, then spending half a day with our son. And that time meant that a decision later on, when we had our second, my wife went back to work, and I was like, well, actually I want that time. I really do value it. I don't want to go back to working 5 days a week, and actually working 4 days a week and having that day with them every single week has been one of the best decisions that I've ever personally made.
Yeah, that's lush. Let's move on then to the second part of your conversation. This is where we asked Dan about some of his favourite failures.
Well, there's quite a few, but I would say at Grabble, we basically try to develop culture by doing presentations and having posters. And, I don't massively blame myself, but I certainly learned from the mistake. So developing culture, having values, this is hard work. It's a lot of work. It is CEO work. It kind of is the work. But I didn't put enough prevalence on it. And as a reality, culture was really good at Grabble because we were growing so fast and we were doing so well, and everyone loved us, and we were doing PR. And when you're hot, everyone loves you, and so you think you got really good culture. But what happens if you haven't really developed values and worked out your interview process around those values, and who are we letting into the company, and all of these things, and taking it really seriously? The downstream of that is when things start to not go well, everyone just leaves, sacks you off, and culture's really shitty and toxic. So I learned that the hard way, and it's been a massive, massive fuck up for me. I think it's the biggest mistake we did at Grabble. There were loads, fundraising from the wrong people, and all sorts of things, giving away too many shares to advisors that did fuck all. Loads and loads of things, but the biggest thing by such a mile is that, honestly, developing a bad culture, that's the founder's fault. Not spending enough time and energy and thought on hiring, that is the founder's fault. And I did those things, so I learned from those mistakes.
And how do you embed culture in your new company since you've taken that learning on board?
Yeah, so we're remote at Heights, fully remote, not on purpose, but, pandemic happened, and then we just decided to lean into it and learn about it. We develop values with, so first and foremost, values come from founders initially. So Joel and I, my business partner, and I worked on our values together by doing interview questions together. And then, as in with a psychologist, and understanding where our values sat. And then we created interview questions for the types of people that we wanted to hire in the future. And And we never did that for a year. We never hired anyone for a year, but we had the questions and the interview process all nailed out based on values of the people that we wanted to hire so far in advance. So when the company started to like desperately need people, we didn't have to backtrack and think about these things. We'd given ourselves the time and space up front to work this stuff out properly. When the team got to about 12 people, we then reinvestigated our values together, and we did values exercises for a couple of weeks. We spent like a couple of weeks on this process of, does this value actually show up in our day-to-day? So basically, when you work out what your values are, you then have to figure out how we're going to do the behaviors. So, we have values champions, like different people working on different things, but everyone, every meeting, every team meeting, a whole bunch of different things, we have one of our 4 values embedded within that thing. And we do coaching for everyone at Heights, it's all around which value are you showing at the moment, which one are you most looking to grow on? The stuff that comes up like 15 times a day. And then on performance management as well. So, we performance manage people based on how well they're doing the job, and we performance manage people for how much they're living the values. And if you aren't living the values, but you're doing a great job, you get a warning. And in the next quarter, if you haven't lived up to your values, then we sack you, because this is a company built on values and culture, and it's really important. And we literally just let someone go for this reason, who'd been with us for 3 years. Great guy, really like him, really valuable, was one of our first employees, our third employee, but it was compromising our values. Didn't used to, but it did. And this is the reality. And so, we make this stuff really clear, really fair, really transparent. As you know, I build in public. We speak about a lot of this stuff really transparently a lot. But in reality, living our values means a lot to us. And values are the kind of things, as is culture, where if you're not willing to risk stuff for it, they don't mean anything. So you have to be willing to fire good people for not living them. You have to. Otherwise, they don't mean anything. They're meaningless. If they only work when they're good, then people start to lose faith in them. You have to have consequence around values. They have to have risk attached to them.
Fantastic, Dan. Really good answer there. Sorry, who do you call when things aren't going to plan?
Well, my best mates are Joel and also a guy called Rob O'Donovan, who's the founder of Charlie HR, amongst other things. He now does a syndicate called Ventures Together. So he speaks to loads of VCs, loads of startups. We've been best friends for about 10 years. And he's probably my go-to guy. Anyone with a lot of humility is really helpful. I'm very lucky because as secret leaders, at very important times, I've called Michael Acton-Smith from Calm. I've called Graham Hobson from Photobox, Nick Jenkins at Moonpig, Renee from Planet Organic, Anne-Marie Hubie from Just Giving. I speak to these people a lot, actually, and I ask them for advice a lot. When things are hard, when things are bad, and I ask them for generalized advice because, you can get that from like a lot of people. But it's important as well, with advice, advice is useless. You want people to share experience. So, I don't really want advice from just your general person that may or may not have gone through stuff. I want to literally find out who has been through an experience similar to this. Can I speak to you about your experience? What can I learn from your experience? What will you have done years later if the experience was changed? That is very different to advice. You need to be really careful with advice. Most advice is absolute utter garbage and everyone wants to give it to you all the time. They've got no fucking clue and they've never lived the experience. So, the art of getting good advice is asking the right question, which is, not everyone will have had your experience that you're having right now, but what is the feeling that you're trying to mitigate? What is the challenge? What is the emotional difficulty? Is it that you want one thing and someone else wants another? Because sometimes you don't even need to get business advice for that. Sometimes that's just in a relationship. So I speak to people who I think have great marriages. How do you get a compromise from a great partner? There's so many different ways you can find these things out, but you need to figure out what the right lesson and insight you're trying to learn is, rather than the specifics of your very niche problem in the world. And then the second part, of course, is making sure you're not wasting people's time. So, going to the right person with the right experience share is also super valuable. People love to help. So you come to someone with the right question and they have the right experience, you have a really productive conversation together, and that's really valuable.
Great answer there, Dan. And can you tell me about a specific time on your startup journey with Heights when you've kind of said, nearly thrown in the towel, or you kind of thought enough is enough? Have there been any of those moments on your journey?
Can't say that I have at Heights, to be honest, but I've thrown the towel in before. I threw the towel in on Gravel. But I can't pretend to you that I have like a really deep and insightful question because a deep and insightful answer here because Heights is a startup. We've grown, we've had to shrink, we've grown again. This is always a challenge, especially in a consumer space where you have physical products. There's big stresses on your balance sheet for stock. There's definitely mistakes made and like hubris of ordering because things are going so well and then you have to pull back. These are challenges I've had, but there's certainly been no moment where I've even been close to throw the towel in. I'm pretty happy and fulfilled doing this right now.
So a big discussion about culture here. And a really interesting one as Dan kind of looks back and sees the things that didn't work out and what he needed to do differently in his latest business in Heights. But just on culture, I don't think we have talked a lot about this in the podcast, so worth highlighting now. I think we've mentioned it from time to time. We've certainly mentioned, companies and their values, their ideas and, their sort of driving force, but perhaps not so much about workplace culture and what makes a good workplace culture, perhaps the things that we're looking for, because I know there's not one ideal, is there? And there's not one way of achieving it either.
Certainly not, and I think as a leader and a CEO and managing director, obviously Dan is building that culture at Heights, and it's such an important thing, and it's kind of intangible in a way. You can't really put it into a company asset. Its culture is ultimately built by the founder and the CEO, but everybody has to build culture collectively as an organisation, and I think the best organisations do this very well by integrating their values into the everyday. So to give an example of this, I used to work at an organisation called the Prince's Trust, and basically every annual appraisal we would review the values based on performance. So values became an integrated part of the culture there, and that was something that you thought about first and foremost. And I think that's what great organisations do, is they build a culture and they build values and everything is embedded into the organisation.
Just one other quick point on this, and again, this is the opposite of how I have done anything, but I'm learning. And that's when Dan said that his approach is very much to build in public.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ballsy approach to doing business, but I think it's so transparent, and I love it because he doesn't just share what's going well, which is often what you see on social media. It's like what isn't going well, and he publicly puts this out in a forum on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Obviously, his investors are aware of it. Everyone is aware of it, and I think it's incredible. And just to share a brief anecdote that he shared recently was about the collapse of the SVB. And he was saying that...
What's that?
The Silicon Valley Bank. So basically, obviously, the government stepped in along with HSBC and saved the UK version. So there were rumours before the collapse, and Dan put together a curation of founders in the space to try and come up with a response and lobby government. And he talked about, the fact that all of his money was in this one bank, and he'd managed to get about 10% of it out. But the other 90% was in an account where it's got a 30-day hold on the funds to withdraw it.
Oh, my goodness. Right.
And his co-founder, Joel, was away on holiday. And a couple of weeks prior, he got locked out. So Joel was the only one with the access to the account. So he was scrambling around trying to get hold of Joel and, pull out this money. Luckily, obviously, the UK government and HSB stepped in to save SVB in the UK, but there was a lot of founders that were very concerned about it. And obviously, Dan made all of this public. And I think what he did really well was using his network, so founders that he built, so putting together lots of founders in the tech space, also utilising other groups like ICE, and actually coordinating response between them at a time of need and desperation for everyone, when a lot of businesses could have gone bankrupt overnight and lots of people could have lost their jobs.
Wow. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that. It also makes me think, I can't help casting my mind back to how we educate people. And I went to school a long time ago, so I'm early 40s. And you literally the ones who were doing well, you got the praise. If you were the brainy ones, you'd learnt the information and it was just the outcome. You ticked it all because you got it right, you remembered it all, and that was it. And that is success. Whereas actually I realised that business is so very different because if actually it was more, if education, and maybe it is now, and I really hope it is because we've both got children who are, primary school or about to start primary school. If it was more about working together as a team and it isn't just about, good, you got the right outcome, well done, 2 + 2 is 4. But actually it was like, well, how are we going to make this, add up to that? And, that doesn't quite work, but look, we could do this. So team working, collaboration, it not all being about the end result, but kind of how you get there. I think it's just fundamental, isn't it? I just can't help thinking how, wonderful on one level, but woefully, we're not going to create as many entrepreneurs as we could do or give people the skills to create their own businesses if that is just how we focus education. Anyway, it's just my own minor light bulb moment, but I'm sure it will resonate with other people, especially of my kind of generation.
Definitely. And I think there's, talk of like trying to embed entrepreneurship and financial literacy into schools because these skills aren't taught, and it's a different way of thinking usually. As you say, it's not being taught what to do, it's being taught to be able to think creatively. And it's a different skill fundamentally.
And with other people, loads of lessons in Dan's conversation, as you can tell. Right, the final part of it is where he talks a little bit of future gazing, looking at what he is hoping for over the next 5 years or so. So let's jump into that part.
Next 5 years for me, definitely heights. Definitely focused on growing heights. That's my number one priority. My number two, this is professionally, obviously. My number two priority, I hope I'm still doing Secret Leaders. I really enjoy it. I went through a period of really not enjoying it, and it started to feel like work. And when it started to feel like work, I was like, oh, fuck. But I'm really lucky. I've hired so well in that company, so well. It's made a massive difference, and my workload is minuscule. My output is enormous, which is a very rewarding feeling. That's what I was saying in Secret Leaders, that's been a bootstrap company, started in 2017. It's the end of 2022. We're going to be releasing this. Let's change this again. Started in 2017 and releasing it. Started in 2017 and, it's now 2023. So that's 6 years of building a bootstrap company to get to that point. So I'm very proud of my patience there as well. But I hope to be doing that still in 5 years, talking to awesome people and really enjoying the process. But I think the thing that I am going to try and work more on this year is consistent social media presence. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I don't really enjoy it, but it's needed in my business. And I do reach people and it does help them. I just don't massively enjoy a lot of the creation process because it feels like work. And I'm trying hard to work on my mindset around that. Like, why do I feel that way? How can I make it work for me in a more motivating way? This is the challenge I'm trying to work on. I haven't quite nailed it yet, but I hope in 5 years I've nailed this and I'm enjoying the art of being an online creator more so than I currently am.
Love it, Dan. Well, you've definitely built up a great personal brand, so you're definitely doing something right. And in terms of, there's an opportunity for you to ask our listeners a question. Have you had a chance to think about that, Dan?
I think the question that I would ask you is, who, if you really think about it, who's the last person that you helped? And did you actually pay them attention? Did you actually give them the help that they needed? And the reason that's an important question is, there's a couple of things, but one, we are increasingly living in a lonely society, and loneliness is a massive epidemic in the mental health space, and mental health problems are declared by the World Health Organization the greatest challenge to humankind, full stop, over sustainability or anything else. It's actually mental health. So the data is there. The downstream of this is, if mental health is such a big problem, if loneliness is such a big problem, quite often we assume that people are fine. Everyone's fine, especially in the UK. Everyone's fine. I'm fine. But if you actually are someone and you give them the attention, you pay them attention, you really go out of your way to be in service to help someone else, I found that to be the most rewarding thing. this is one of the reasons I like investing, right? I really enjoy being able to support others on the journey one way or another. The reality about health is when you obsess, I only speak from my own experience, I have an ego, and whenever I spend too much time thinking about myself and obsessing over myself, I end up getting myself really unhappy, moody, anxious, all these things. When I focus on other people and how I can help them, those feelings are lifted. I feel much better. So actually, to me, being in service and helping others is not that altruistic an act at all. It makes me feel better, and hopefully it helps someone too. So it's a really important thing to ask yourself, and I try to ask myself this regularly.
Cracking question there, Dan. And moving on to one of the key parts now of the Founded and Grounded podcast is essentially asking featured founders for just one piece of advice that they'd pass on to somebody either thinking of starting a business or running an early stage startup. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Dan. What would that one piece of advice be?
I think my one piece of advice is not to take yourself too seriously. It sounds like a bit random advice, to be honest, but I think over a 10-year journey, and don't kid yourself, over what's likely to be a 10+ year journey, if you just take everything so seriously all the time, you're not able to laugh, you're not able to find moments of joy and have fun with it, you're going to fucking hate yourself. You're going to hate the journey, you're going to hate the startup, you're going to build resentment, then you're going to get sloppy, you're not going to enjoy the work, you're going to put shit product out, you're going to behave like a wanker to your colleagues, and you're going to just end up being a miserable person that no one likes. What is the fucking point? Like, you get one life, you're here on earth to have fun. We work in a pretty serious space. We have mental health like comments and challenges come up from our customers and from our colleagues all the time, and we still manage to find a way to have like a really great time doing it, including when things are hard. And startup journeys are rewarding, but you shouldn't make them I guess, just to say that bit again, startup journeys are really rewarding, but they can consume you, and that's to be expected. But make sure you don't become a boring dickhead in the meantime. Enjoy it, have fun. The journey is absolutely awesome and worthwhile. And if you can laugh at yourself, you'll always find a way to enjoy the realities of the shit that hits the fan, which it's inevitably going to do over and over again.
Got a fantastic audio bite there, Dan. Absolutely love that answer. Last question. If I knew you better, what's one question that I would have asked you?
You'd have asked me, what are my personal beliefs in spirituality and mental health?
What is the answer to that then, Dan?
I believe it's important to work on your mental health for sure, but you can only solve those things at a biological or a mind level. And I actually truly think that the greatest solve for figuring out all mental health perspectives is to understand the self and therefore consciousness better. However, that is a level up. In my own experience, I had to start to understand my own mental health and my own limiting self-beliefs and other things like that before I could really approach the deep question of who am I? But ever since I have been doing that, ever since I've taken a really keen interest in consciousness and spirituality, I've just found, well, firstly, most importantly, I found a million more questions than I have answers. And if you're curious, you're constantly asking questions, then I feel like you're on the right path.
Love it, Dan. And lastly, where can people find out a bit more about yourself, Heights, Secret Leaders, and all of your other ventures that you've got going on at the moment?
So I'm at Dan Murray-Serter on all social platforms. I've also got my own personal website that I never share, but I'm danmurrayserter.com. Heights is yourheights.com, Secret Leaders, any podcast player.
Amazing, Dan. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, mate.
Here's the question, and it's the one that I have all the time. How do you make social media less like work? So what Dan wants to know, or his dilemma, is very much my own too. Any ideas on how we make it less like work? I've had some thoughts on it, actually. Shall I tell you mine whilst you think? I was thinking one of the reasons it feels like work is it is partly my work. That is one part of what I get paid to do. So that's why it feels like work. Another part is about having the skills and feeling like I actually do or don't know what to do. And therefore, if I don't know what to do, I'm kind of keeping it small, keeping it very simple, but seeing what other people are doing really well and thinking, why can't I be 20 and automatically know this stuff? Whereas actually what I should do, and this is what I take away, is that I perhaps need to learn so that I'm more comfortable doing the things that I think other people are doing on there that could work for my business. And then it would feel less like work because I actually know what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think if you're being kind of more authentic and not worried about doing something that is absolutely perfect, I think that's the best way to be consistent with social media. And also the people that are fantastic with social media obviously repurpose a lot of content, because somebody's seen it on one channel doesn't mean that they're going to see it on another, and you just have to tweak it for each specific channel. And a quote that I love is that one actually our podcast editor told us, so shout out to James here, was every day there's a new person that's born who hasn't heard of the Flintstones. And it's so true that you have to consistently promote things, because otherwise people aren't going to know about it. So I think that's sometimes where the tension comes from, because it can feel like you're having to consistently. I'm going with that. And I think that's why sometimes it feels like work, is because you have to be consistent with it. But there's some great social media scheduling tools out there to bulk it up and do it as one, and then forget it essentially, so you don't have to keep going back and posting.
Yeah. And you don't have to be like, I know all of that stuff, but I think it's easy to, especially with social media, see people who are doing it super amazingly and just think, well, I can't do that. I can't come up with that sort of funny thing, how they lip synced that or came up with that kind of joke. It's like, no, you just need to be you quite consistently on there. It's as simple as that. There are loads of different things you can do, but for goodness sake, just start by doing something. Master the bit you can do well first, then learn the next skill. Don't make those comparisons, because otherwise you might end up doing nothing, because you're not a comedian. So you're not about to turn that out anyway, and it might not even be appropriate, for goodness sake, but you can disappear down that rabbit hole, can't you? Dan's question for listeners, that speedy recap. So who was the last person you helped? Did you pay them attention and give them the help they needed? I really liked this, because actually I can say, yes, that was quite simple. That is one bit I have been getting right, certainly in the therapy space that I'm in. But on the subject of social, so we would like you to share your answers to this question, share it with us on our social media platforms. You can find us all over the place, as you know, and frequently do. So please do that. But whilst we're there, let's just go to our community lead, Samantha, and hear what you've been saying in response to our previous episode, where our featured entrepreneur, as is tradition, asked a question. So let's get a little recap on that from Sam.
Last episode, we spoke to the co-founder of Angel Investing School, Andy, who is aiming to level the playing field in the world of angel investing. He spoke about what keeps moving him forward with confidence and how someone becomes a trusted advisor. So it was a fantastic episode for those of you interested in the world of angel investing, but don't know where to begin. And of course, like all of our guests, Andy had a question for you, our listeners. Andy's question was, how are you doubling down on serving your customers rather than your investors? And it was lovely to see how many of you really resonated with this and spoke in the answers about how important client is to your business. We had a lot of conversations about how the success of client businesses is at the core of your businesses, that it should be at the front of every single business, and that meeting those customer needs is so important, that we can't deliver good service without focusing on the end user experience. So it seemed like a lot of you are on the same idea as Andy and really want to make sure that customers stay at the front, even when taking on investors and starting to grow those businesses. So that's fantastic to hear, and it'll be lovely to see if those of you who go and listen to Andy's story about angel investing have any ideas about how to make sure that stays the case once you start taking on investors. Please do come and let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts at any time.
Thank you so much for listening to us today. Until the next time.